Welcome back to Indie Housing Market. I'm Kyle Morris with Morris Property Group and FC Tucker, and this is...
Hi, Shelly Walters with FC Tucker, Shelly Walters Realty Group.
I'm like really frustrated right now because we got new mics, which is awesome. We finally got like our audio figured out, and I feel like I can't touch the table, right? It's going to like bang really, really loud, so I'm just going to be awkward with my hand. I'm going to sit on my hands. Anyways, so we wanted to kind of go over projections for next year. So next week we're going to do an end of year kind of review of like how the market went, seasonal, like the seasonal numbers, all of that stuff.
And it was a crazy, I mean, we talked like
really
every
weird.
3 months it was like something different, or maybe even every 2 months it was just something different. So here we sit a couple of weeks before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Listened yesterday to Buffini's predictions, bold predictions, and Brian Buffini is somebody who has done this for years and years and years and studies it, so pretty strong on what he usually predicts is correct.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about what he's seeing and expecting for the next couple of years, but truly just looking, we want to look at spring of 2024.
I feel bad though because I know in his I don't even know what you call it, State of the Union, I don't know, but his bold predictions, he's like, and everybody just does podcasts off of this the next day, and I was like, and here we are going to do
not as much as theirs,
not as
much as some of the people go into the deep dive. We're just going to give what we think is important to our area.
We also don't charge anybody. I think that's what he's really talking about, is people
Right,
steal his
exactly.
data and then charge
Let
people.
me do all the data for you, and then you guys will sell it.
Yeah, we're just trying to hand it out to anybody who could benefit from the information, whether it be an agent, a seller, or a buyer, or just the general masses who are obsessed and consumed with curiosity about the real estate market, which I think is just about everybody these
constantly.
days.
But the thing is just interest rates, of course, and like I said, he's known for being correct on his predictions because of his background and everything.
He was he is a real estate agent, a very successful one. But he's created this massive kind of like consulting company that does coaching and all this other stuff. And they do spend a lot of money and effort into getting their data and getting their data correct.
Because they want to help all the people paying him to be able to help them moving forward. Yeah. But he is predicting at least 6.5% next spring as our number we're going to probably see.
I wonder if he means early. I don't think he clarified if he means early spring or late spring. Not that it really matters. But I think we'll see. I mean, we've already seen the downward trend
a quick
recently
jump in the past couple of weeks. What was interesting to him is he's saying that life happens, and so we are in a situation right now where we have pent up sellers because they've been sitting on the 3% and saying I really can't move, but at some point now we are at maybe a year and a half of sellers sitting there who really need to move.
Yeah.
So the pent-up sellers, he thinks, are going to bust loose next spring as well. We've been saying this, and he's saying it based on life happens, things that happen to you. You either had, babies and you need just to get more space, or you've need to downsize horribly. I mean, just all your reasons. Relocation.
Yeah.
And you've just been sitting there because you've had that 3%. But now, because life has happened, you're done. It's time. This spring, which is our market when we really start to see people begin to sell again, is we need to move. And he was saying that the builders, which has been interesting, have proved that the magic number where the market's probably going to bust loose a little bit is under 6%, because he said they were doing some, 6.99% was what they would buy down to, and that really didn't help much. But the second they went to 5.99, they bought those down to that. They started selling houses. So
psychologically, I just think when that number changes, because really the difference between 6.1 and 5.9 is just not that big of a difference, but psychologically, it's like when you go buy a car
or you list the house at 599 compared to 600 or 601. You don't want to have that 6 in front of it. It's like it's better at 5. And we're talking, that I never play this game. I don't know if you do, but 599,999.
I did not do that.
Or 599.9. I just don't like that. So
it's and even then, like so as a listing agent, there's a lot of thought that goes into that. It's very dependent on the house. So because a lot of people's searches go up to like a hard number, like 250 or
it's called
bridge
gapping.
Exactly.
Or bridge pricing.
But when you hit like right at, like, so you said 6, like when you hit right at 6, I get people who go all the way up to 6, and then I get people who their search starts at 6. For me, though, when I do a search, I don't know about you, I would assume you do the same thing. Like I go to 625 or I start at like 580 so that I cover a bunch, because you just never know if something's been sitting on the market or something's a steal, or it like just needs a little bit of aesthetic repairs or whatever at 580, but it's like actually a better house. You just need to do some updating, blah, blah, blah. So like I try to grab everybody. I think most agents tend to do that these days, actually. They kind of like go a little bit above the search. They have that conversation, but
for the past couple of years, not this 2023, but 2021, 2022, my thought was if my person tells me I want to look at a house between 300 and 350, I'd say let's look up to 360, 365 because we can make an offer. Well, in the 2021, 2022 years, when you said you could go from 3 to 350, we stopped. We went to 275 to 325. So you have to know the market you're in of how you're going to like look at pricing. Because the last thing I wanted them to do is find a house they loved at 350 and know that that's probably going to sell for 370 or 380.
Yeah.
We had to look below what they said they wanted because of the escalation. Also, that bridge number, like you're saying, the psychological is the other part of it is it's, let's say if somebody's going to look at 300 to 350. And so if somebody wants to list their house at $299, they are missing that 300 to 350 person. But if you have somebody looking and can afford 300 to 350, they're not going to buy the $300,000 house. They're just going to really want that 350 house because it's going to have more than the $300,000 house. So listing your house from $299 to $300, you just became the least house in the group. So stay with me for a second. So if we
or the most expensive in the group.
Right. So if you're at 250
if they're going
to
up to
300, you actually catch the whole 100 group. So 250 to 300 and a 300 to 350. So that's where I don't like the 299.9. I just missed the people who can buy for 300, 310, or 315. So I do that 300. I don't care about the psychological number. I want the most people looking at my house.
That's what I do as well. And when I see it and people talk about it, the facts just, I don't know, the data doesn't really support the 299 versus the 300, quite honestly. It just doesn't. So.
We have more eyes on it. Like we said, if you have somebody, all of our searches for all of our buyers looking, you only have there's 50 people, 250 to 300, and there's 50 people, 300 to 350. You just got 100 buyers looking at your house.
Yeah.
Why lose those 50? And some people say it was psychological. Well, not in my book. I have a psychology degree. It's not psychological. It isn't.
And I don't know. There's just so many misnomers with this industry in general. I don't know. I feel like we try to talk about quite a bit of them so like we can weed them out for people. But at the end of the day, I can't control what people do. It's probably for the best. I can't control what people do, for the record. So
pricing is so important, though. There's so much into it. It's not, you just don't grab a number. If I'm looking at a house too, when I do pricing and I think it should be like 269, I'll go to 275 because I want to catch that person looking from 275 to 325. Even though that they do have the ability to pay more for a house, I want to see the buyer pool as big as possible to pull my house up.
Well, and to that point, I don't think people understand how much thought process goes into pricing. It is way more than just the comps, in my opinion. I think you're the same way based on what you just said. And I will see other agents or whatever it may be, and they're like, oh, this is overpriced or this is underpriced. And like, I know what I price it at and I know why I price it at. Like the bigger thing is like, you need to take a look at that number and see what I'm trying to accomplish with that. And that's what I do when I write offers, because, there's situations where it's overpriced because they are super open, that they know they're going to have to make concessions, or things like that. There's people where you're underpriced because you're trying to create a bidding war.
Or just need to sell quickly.
Or just need to sell quickly. There's just so much that goes into it, and I just think it is, I don't even know. This is a pet peeve of mine. When I have another agent call me and say, hey, I know what you're going to say. They're like, hey, where'd you get this price? And I'm like, I don't know, do your job. Like, just write me an offer. Like, let the appraiser figure it out. We'll kind of go from there. Like, I'm not here to run comps for you. Like, I did run comps. I didn't like just pull a number out of my ass, so to speak. So, I don't know. I always think that's super, super funny.
I have started to keep, though. I didn't used to keep the market analysis I did.
Yeah, the comps.
But I've started to keep it because agents are asking me this more and more. Where'd you come in with your number? Here you go. And they're like, okay, cool. Like, why don't you do this?
But
I don't understand that. You're really going to trust me? What if I don't know what I'm doing?
Right. But don't you think the interesting thing about it, like when I talk to my team about it, is, I can run everything out there. And then the appraiser gets to make his own opinion. And I can even, we give the comps. We leave them on the counter
Right.
for the appraiser and all that
Definitely.
stuff. But it's still, you can guide, lead. I don't want to say lead, but you can guide and show like how you came up with value. You can show the improvements, all this other stuff. The appraiser still is going to be the final say on it. Like, that's just the reality of it. Even if like we disagree and then I send more evidence in for them to raise the price, they can still just say no for the record, right? Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, the appraiser's value is what matters the most, regardless of what that agent or me as an agent actually thinks of the price. The appraiser is what matters.
Well, and you can manipulate data. We always say that.
Yes,
Like if I'm trying to figure out that the house should be around 300, I can manipulate the data and grab these comps versus these comps and see 325 or 370, 275. And for me, I want to do that. I want to look at everything, and I want to look at it a billion different ways. I mean, when I do a market analysis to try to figure out what to list in my house, it's like 2 to 3 hours just to figure out. If I could grab the wrong comps and I'm at 325 and I should have been at 275 or 290 or something like that, that's going to kill the listing. So we know that manipulating with the wrong data, but it's easy to grab the wrong data. And in my board right now, agents, you need to understand we're still having issues with the information out there being incorrect. So know what you're looking for and triple check it, because I'll tell you square footage is still wrong.
Yeah, it is. We dealt with it. Even like within my team, we were having a conversation, and it was rolled into the system incorrectly. So you're getting two different numbers because there wasn't a deep enough dive within the conversation. But it's just really, really interesting when you get into that. And like when I go into a listing appointment, I have to also have, to your point, the comps that hurt our value. Because I've never gone into a listing appointment, and like, so sometimes you get sellers who have done their research, blah, 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 and like, hey, we got this house, this does us. And I'm like, well, it's super coincidental. You only picked all the ones that were like good for your value, right? Like, I don't, like, that's just not a luxury I have.
Or did you because if they don't pull the pictures, it's like, okay, you still haven't upgraded your kitchen. And the 3 you pulled that
has
you want
granite
to have,
or quartz.
They've completely gutted their house and started over, but you love those numbers. But we have to look at the pictures and see if it's. But
they take like a 2-story to comp, like, oh, this one's. Gets this much price per square footage, and like it's not even the same house.
They always take it. What I love is when I also pull the comps. When I see some weirdness, one or two are just kind of off, I'm like, what's this? What's a scoop? What's the scuttlebutt on this house? Because they know, that was a divorce. They had to get rid of the house, or they fought over it, or they didn't care, or
it's a me between an agent and they had a buyer, and it took
cut their commission,
a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
But usually, not only do we look at the stats, but you have to know the history of the house and really just the drama around the sale of that house.
The narrative of it.
If it's off a little bit, it's probably because there's some drama behind it, not that the house had, I'm a ghost hunter, but not that it had a ghost or anything.
Right.
So knowing everything and then sitting down and asking your seller, do you know why this house is? Because you guarantee that the seller or the buyer that comes to want to make an offer has said, well, this house sold for this amount, and where did you come up with this? I go, well, I threw that one out because I know the situation here.
Yep. I just think it's, as we go through this, and it is more complex than people think. And then even then, there's somebody who gets to come in and trump that, just to be on, the appraiser's going to come in. So it's just interesting when I deal with that.
Well, it's not.
It used to kind of bug me. These days, I just think it's laughable. But,
the thing about it is it's not rocket science. But it's extremely important to not do it wrong, because this is where we get to what we were talking about. The stats coming up is the price reductions going on right now. When do you do a price reduction in this market? It's totally different than, we haven't even had to do price reductions. To now we're trying to figure out when is a good time to do price reductions. We're looking at averages of 30 to 40 days on market. So houses sell in 4 to 5 days if they're great, still happening. But do you list it and, on Monday it didn't sell in 5 days? Do the price reduction then, I don't believe we should be at all.
Yeah.
You know?
So I had this conversation maybe 2 months ago with another agent, and I was saying, don't do price reductions, and the argument was, well, I got to do it based off of showings and interest, and I can understand that that is a valid argument. But when you look at the numbers in Fishers, for example, this past week, so we had 10 that pended in a week. 4 of them went, or 10 of them pended last week. That's what I meant to say. 4 of them sold in 7 days or less, right? I had 5, 7, 2, and 4 days on market. Everything else, the lowest I had was 24 days on market. I had 49, 35, 24, 55, 60, and 39 days on market. For the rest that sold, the other 6. Only 4 out of all of those 10 did a price adjustment, and even then, the price adjustment was $10,000 to $15,000. And I thinking back on it, most of them leaned towards the 10. I think I just saw one $15,000 price adjustment. So, you're talking about 2 houses that did not do a price adjustment and got full price offers at 35 and 24 days on market.
So if you sat on your original thought, if you as a listing agent were positive you were correct on what you listed it at, did you just hurt your seller by doing a price reduction? Because the average days on market are showing 30 to 35.
Yeah.
If you do a price reduction at 15 or 20, the house is not supposed to sell yet. Sit on it. Let it happen.
Yeah.
At 40 or 50 days on market, start talking about it.
I will clarify that now that I think about it. So I can't tell you that they got full price offers. I won't know that until that close data comes in, actually. What I mean to say is they sold without making a price adjustment at 30 days.
That's what I'm saying too.
Yeah, so they may have taken 10 less, right, or 7 less, or average listed price close is 99, 98, depending on where you're at. Westfield, your stats show 102 because of new construction. But if you do the 10 drop and then get beat up for 10, you're losing whatever.
Also, you'll never
20,
know because
you
can't figure it out. But in my opinion, is a buyer in this market, okay, looking at Carmel, we're at 99.5% listed
I wouldn't
sale
drop
ratio.
price till 30 days. In
At
a couple,
least.
2 months ago, we were saying 21 days, right? So.
Well, Westfield, we're at 98%. Carmel's 99%. Zionsville's 98%. All listed sale ratio, not looking at new build sales. So the thing about that is would you have got 99.5% of the original list price that you did day one, or did you get 99% because you lowered it at 10,000? My feeling is you're going to get 99.5% or 98% of whatever the price is that day. So don't lower it until you're really looking at 50 days on the market when you're really not selling. Not selling at 20
Unless
days.
you got to sell quickly, right?
That's
totally different.
All the outliers.
Yeah.
But not selling at 20 days is okay.
It's normal.
You're still below normal. It's okay. Sit and wait, because buyers at 30 days on market are still going to make an offer below list. That's just what's happening today.
Yeah.
So don't lower it to go lower than that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that comes down to agents because, it's not just agents, it's just the consumer also. But, the past 3 years, you haven't had to have a lot of these. They're not difficult conversations. They're uncomfortable conversations of, why isn't this selling? A seller is going to ask that no matter what, right? And, I have the data to say, we shouldn't. We either sell here or we sell here. And that's our map when I sit down with somebody saying, as long as we're prepared for either of these, we're going to be fine. And I just don't think agents, this is a broad statement, I hate to say it, but I'm not sure a lot of agents are used to having that uncomfortable conversation to say, because a lot of them aren't in the weeds on the data. And so that's why isn't it selling? And, when you sit there and you're I don't know, it's just not selling. We need that person. We got the data points to say, it shouldn't. It shouldn't have. Yeah.
No,
it's not
we're
that
so
big of a
cool.
deal.
And that's the conversation right at the very, very beginning.
Yeah.
And being very confident with the list price that you chose, looking at that over and over again and saying, this is where we should be. Number 2 is telling the seller, this is where we are, and this is how I came up with the numbers, and have them being comfortable with the number you chose, and to tell them we are looking at not having an offer on average for 35 to 40 days right now. So sit comfortable, see what's happening. If we absolutely have no showings, pick up the phone and start calling agents with houses in the same price point. If they're not having any showings, we have a dead market going right now. And we've seen this happen off and on But if your house down the street at the same price, great house, very comparable, has had 14 showings, we've got another issue. And I will tell you the other issue that you can find, and I've seen it before, and I've called agents, they're in the wrong area. They've got the wrong zip code. They've got the wrong school system.
I've seen that.
So if you've got problems with the sale of it, don't automatically go to price. Check your listing again.
Photos, I mean, there's just so much
Switch
I
some
can
photos
go into
around, but price is not the answer, like most of the time.
But like so in Noblesville, I saw one that pended this week. It went on the market in March. It was like 257 days. Still sold. There was one that went on the market in August. Still sold. Now they did take under list, and they had made price adjustments, but they still sold. And I would just argue when you're like going into the market, you got to look at worst case scenario, not best case. And then if I do that, we can build everything backwards from that, and anything above it, it's win. It's pretty easy to do. I think there's not a lot of inventory. I think there's a lot of promises. I hate to say some of this stuff with broad statements, but I think there's things being said to potentially get listings that may not be entirely built in facts, and people are just, like, there's low inventory, so it hurts agents. And obviously I have a living, I have a family, I have stuff I have to pay for and all that. So I think that kind of stuff comes into play sometimes with some of these houses. I really do. I mean, there's no way to quantify it, but I mean, I work in this industry. I know what I see.
Well, it's just
I talk to plenty of agents.
Right, and being confident with what you did when you started the process with the seller, and to not try to change mid-level because it's been 14 days, like, oh, let's just completely change what I said in the beginning I was confident of. It's just,
I see stuff on the market 7 days, and then they drop 10,000. I'm like, what? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So, and then, fine, I'll just wait to see where you're at 21, because you're probably going to drop again. So, and then I'll lowball that one. So, it's just all kind of interesting. But back to like what they were predicting for next year as we went down that rabbit hole.
So the other thing I thought was interesting is this is where we constantly say we don't want to say the negative. The media is saying a lot of stuff that we don't agree with, and we continue to say this has to do because of inventory. But I found this very interesting. Since 2020 and 2023, the amount of units that have sold is down 23%. We were at 5.6 million homes sold in 2020 in the United States, and in 2023 so far 3.9 million. So we're down 23%. Well, the units that are coming down at 23% is because of the inventory.
Yeah.
But it does show we are low on sales, and yes, that makes the market be slower, but there's just no inventory.
Well, the amount of people who need to move hasn't changed. The ability to move has changed. So if you change how, give people more ability to move, right, with more inventory, all of those people that have been pent up, so to speak, for the past 3 years, they're going to come out and they're going to be competing for what should be a decent amount of inventory, but you have a disproportionate amount of inventory of buyers now, right? And so it's just going to cause a bigger problem, especially as these rates go down, because they're going down.
Right, and we get back to what we keep saying. We will see all the buyers jump back in because the rates went down. Well, we'll see the sellers, the pent-up sellers who need to move, have sat and waited and said, we've got to move. These prices hit the sixes. That's a psychological number. It's been in the eights. It's been in the sevens. You see a six in front of it, it's going to happen. The other thing that was interesting, he said that the first-time home buyer age was 32 for a while. It is now 35, which I was shocked to hear that it was that high.
I was really surprised it was that high.
But there's 45 million 35-ish age group right now in the United States that would be a first-time home buyer. It's a lot of buyers still sitting out there waiting to get their first home. That was something. So we have a lot of pent-up buyers and sellers. When that's going to break loose is going to be interesting, but he's thinking by summer to next fall, we're going to see this happen.
Well, the other thing he talked about was the generational transfer of wealth that is going to occur over the next 10 years. It's the largest transfer of wealth ever in American history, from baby boomers down into, their children and their grandchildren. And I've seen it as an agent where parents and grandparents are helping with down payments and all this other stuff, and all of a sudden these people will have the ability with down payments which will then help their monthly payments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that's not a reality I live in, so to speak, but when I see that happening to people, for me, it makes me want to be able to do that for my children at some point, because I do think it is going to have a major impact on it. The other problem you have is going to drive prices up, and so then it will almost have to be carried down into another generation, because it will just perpetuate the problem instead of solve the problem.
Well, and parents and grandparents want to see their children
live better than you.
The American dream, own a house, home.
Because rent, that is one of the things he also discussed. He said one of the largest contributors to inflation was rent prices. You and I both were kind of like, I think it is a contributor. It's hard for me to say it is the largest contributor, but he's got more data than I do. That just seems like I've said this a lot on this one because we are talking broad strokes, but that's a broad statement in my opinion. Price of goods in general has gone up, but rent has gone up significantly.
Rent and housing prices, yes, definitely.
It's gone way up.
We know that the housing market is causing inflation.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah. But they were saying, Fed's going to hold steady. Inflation has actually come down more than they thought. It's not where it needs to be at the 2 point whatever. It's in the threes. So,
he also stated as a political year where we're
election
year. So he said they're all going to be wanting to fight for the greater good of the United States during,
because they all want to take ownership of, like, it's because of us.
Yeah.
Right?
So that'll all be part of it too. I don't know what else that's about it I had on his, but those are some of his boldest predictions. What they said too, I've heard this a couple times, which just kills me, is why this happened and how this happened and why this at this time in our world. But this was the biggest, fastest in our history. Rate hike in history.
There was one other thing, actually, now I think about, that he said that I thought was very interesting, and that is that they are predicting the 2025 spring market to be the largest volume market in history, because rates will have come down and people have been recovered from all of this stuff. And so, I know that's a little ways out, but that just shows the trend of how this is going to go, where people are worried about buying and selling, and it's going to get worse. It'll be more affordable worse, if that makes sense. Like, the prices will be higher, but, like, you'll get your lovely low rates, so to speak. Yeah. So, your buying power will be back, but it's just going to cost more. So
I just
it's going
think
to end up
what
being
was
a wash.
A part of that as well is we have watched 2023 just kind of be like, we're in a weird thing, and now we're kind of watching. 2024 is going to be the stabilizer of figuring it all out, and then 2025 is, okay, normal market. Let's just
right, because people want to see it stabilize, and then they'll be like, all right, we're good.
Yeah, we're comfortable. Yeah. And the people.
The early adapters to that, though, will do the best.
Absolutely. And we say that it's right now.
Yeah, it is.
Right
it
now.
is.
But the other part of that is the people who purchased in 2021 and 2022 and grabbed a house because they just needed a house, they're going to be the sellers in probably 2025. Like, okay, it's cool. We can sell. We made some equity, but let's get the house we really wanted.
Yeah, because people were settling because things were going so fast.
It was weird.
It was tough.
Yeah.
Hopefully that never happens again.
Weird market that we've been through in the past couple of years. But he also, one more thing he said was they're going to see a mass exodus of agents by the end of this year, first of the beginning of the year, because of the volatile market and not knowing what to do or how to handle it, or just not being able to do business anymore if you're just one of those agents. And he says that it's going to be a big change too.
Yeah, but the interesting thing, like I agree with that, and that's sad to me, quite honestly, because there's a lot of good agents and potential great agents out there. Nobody starts out as this insane top producer. You have to perfect your craft and all of those things, and learn the business and learn the industry, learn the data, all of that stuff. So that makes me sad to see some potential great agents never get their opportunity, so to speak. On the back end of that, though, as this trends the other direction, I think there will be an influx.
Right. As soon as everything stabilizes.
And they won't know any difference. Right. Yeah. Because they'll be like, I don't know, this is just the market that I got into. I think you even said it before. you got in like 08, 09.
2008 September.
Yeah, and everybody's like, "This is horrible," and you're like, "I don't know. This is what This is what I got into. So this is what it is." So
it was the best education ever.
Exactly right. So
Yeah.
So there will be agents that come in that will be ahead of the curve because they come into a bad market. So I hope for agents that they just stick it out. I really do. I know
because the predictions are we're getting ready to come out of it.
Yeah. I see a lot of people out there like, I hope there's less agents, more business. Like, I'm just not that guy. I want everybody to succeed. I don't think anybody really takes from anybody's pot, so to speak.
Well, I always tell this story.
Attitude of abundance, so to speak. Right?
I always tell this story because when I first started, I'm extremely competitive and against myself. And, I was wanting to be the best, everything. And they were always saying, just get your fair share, just get your fair share. And I saw the stats come up from my board, at the end of the month, and there was like 2,400 houses sold in that month in all of the donut counties. And I'm like, well, gosh, I could get like 500 houses in 1 month. Like, I can go do that.
Yeah.
And, my mentality was, look at all the houses that are selling.
There's houses everywhere. Literally, my entire drive home, it is just houses.
20 houses in a month is a lot.
Yo, that's a lot.
And I was like, I could sell 2,000 houses in a month. Get your fair share. There's just no way. That's how many houses are selling every month. Not in today's market, but there's still.
And even then, there's two sides to every transaction.
Right. There's way more than you could ever do. So just get your fair share. So if you're an agent that's a little frustrated or scared or wondering what they're going to do is, go to my board and see how many houses are selling. Just get one or two of them. You're doing good.
Or if you're the agent who wants other agents to fail, I just can't get down with that. I just can't. I mean, it comes from a place of fear, of entitlement, of scarcity, of just really negative mindset. And then what happens is, people start to get self-righteous, or they start to think less of other people. And that's just not a good place in our industry.
If I would come to you and go, you know what, I'm having a really hard time trying to figure this out, and you go, figure it out, and walk away.
Oh my gosh, I have an open door.
I know.
So do you. Our office is right next to each other.
Yeah, they come into my office and ask questions, and how do you do this? Or I'm like, here's my playbook. I will give it to you. I
100%.
will explain to you, because you're not going to do it exactly like me anyway, but it's not going to be something that is, you take it from me, I lose it.
Yeah.
I just go do it as well, and you go do it as well, and we keep moving forward. So that's a whole nother mentality of.
It's like the NFL saying, "I wish there was 20 teams instead of 32 teams," just because the talent would be so much better. I'm like, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Less people playing.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's go into the stats. Yeah. You want to do yours?
Yeah, so Carmel, again, we are at the end of the month and also end of the year and also at Christmas time. So 14 houses hit the market in the past 7 days in Carmel. 7 of those pended. So half of the houses that hit the market pended, but a total of 18 houses pended. So we had 25 houses penned in Carmel. 14 hit the market. So we had a huge negative inventory in Carmel this past year. Yeah. Currently, past 30 days, 91 of them sold. 17 were new builds. So what I was trying to look at, this was interesting to me just to find out. So in past 30 days, 91 houses sold in Carmel. The average days on market, 31, median 11, list to sale ratio, 99.5%. So I looked at the new builds. Of those 91, 17 were new. Their average days on market was 88 and a median of 58. So the new builds are setting longer, but what that tells me is that made that 35 higher. So I did not go back in the reverse and pull out just the resales. So those days on market are pulled really high from the new builds, but the new builds also are selling at 102% list to sale ratio in Carmel. So the days on market, if we look at the new builds pulled to 35, maybe more like 20. And I didn't do that because I didn't stop and do that. So days on market are actually pretty good.
That's interesting, because a lot of that goes into upgrades and construction, right? Because people aren't overbidding on just building something for the most part. And so I just, it was put into the system based off of like a base model, and then all of a sudden you have upgrades, and like, I want the wrought iron this, and I want the extra French doors or blah, 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 which is adding to that to a certain extent. But what it really means, though, also is people are still building out their houses, instead of just being like, oh, we'll take this. And,
bare minimum. Just give me sticks, please. I want to have a house I can go sit
And
in.
usually you do that if you're planning on staying. right?
Yeah. So I would assume a lot of people building are hoping to stay because of this volatility they're watching.
Yeah.
They really don't want to do this again in 5 years.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Westfield, 14 hit the market as well. 3 of those pended. A total of 13 pended, but anyway, so a total of 16, sorry. 14 were listed, so we had a negative inventory of 2 in Westfield. So we're not growing yet. 105 sold. 63 of those were new builds. Average days on market for the new builds was 40, but the average day of all sales was 36. So they're averaging, still staying the same. Listed sale ratio in Westfield, 98% over the board. Zionsville, 3 hit the market. None of those pended. A total of 2 houses pended last week. 26 sold in the past 30 days. Their average days on market is 66, median is 42, and listed sale ratio is 98%. And what I just find is so interesting is there's such low inventory in Zionsville, but their days on market are high. And that just doesn't correlate to me. But anyway, that's
It's a very
Zionsville.
specific town, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the end of those.
I love Zionsville.
I grew up there.
Seriously? Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
Yeah, cute little town.
It is.
It was a much smaller town when I was there. And they had a huge...
Brick line streets, all that.
Yeah, they had a building... they would not give building permits. They had a strong hold on building permits. Like, it was something like 30 a year when I was there. Way back in the day. But, yeah, they really controlled the build there. And so it's still a quaint town because of it.
They have done really... So a lot of the towns on the north side have had visions of growth. And Zionsville has done a very good job of navigating growth, but keeping their current feel.
Yeah.
Where I would say
it's
Carmel
the
today,
it's called the Village.
It is, yeah.
It's
Whereas
still
Carmel's a totally different beast these
don't
days.
get me
Fishers,
started, but yeah.
Okay, so Fishers, we had 12 go on the market, anywhere from 289 to basically $1 million. 9 of them are still active, so 3 pended, but 10 actually pended. So we did pick up some inventory in both Fishers and Noblesville. It's just a minimal amount. Noblesville is a little bit more. There's 135 on the market in Fishers. Is interesting, though. So there's average days on market in Fishers is 28, and the median is 29. It's the first time I've seen the median actually be higher, which I just thought was interesting. That's about all I need to say about it. So anyways, Noblesville, though, had 23 go on the market, anywhere from 174 to 1.29, and 5 of those pended, but 14 total actually pended last week. So we did pick up some inventory in Noblesville. And their average days on market is 52 with a median of 32. But when I was looking at it for both of them, and that's what we talked about, there's just this huge swing. So of the ones that pended last week, the 14, you sold in 1 to 9 days. And then there was nothing until 30 days to 257 days. So there's this huge gap from 9 days to 30 days where nothing pended. Now, obviously, that's coincidental, anecdotal, whatever you want to say. But it really just goes back to what we've been saying is you either sell really quick or you're going to sit, and that's okay. And just because you didn't sell really quick doesn't mean that you're not going to sell at list price at 30 days as the other data points have backed up. So I don't know. That's about it. So, but next week we'll do the end of year wrap up. Kind of see what we want to do with that one.
Yeah, our stats will be a little different. Just try to figure out a lot more of the stats of what really, really happened in our market, not what the media is saying in the nation, or even our Indianapolis market media. Just sometimes they're off too.
Well, but I don't.
Again, where do they get their data, and how do they pull it? We can always pull.
And then how do they look at it?
How do they tweak it? How do they spin it?
Because that's the problem. It's I don't know if it's intentional or unintentional, because a lot of times the data is correct. The headline is incorrect with the data, if that makes sense. So, and then, you got people who say, well, they do it so people read it and blah, blah, blah. Well, what ends up happening is consumers aren't educated because, they'll be sales are down. But when you say the word sales, I think people think of the price. What you're really saying is less houses are selling because there's less houses being sold, not that houses aren't selling, because we're actually at higher value points than we've ever been before. So
it's all verbiage, and to understand what that means.
The words you use matter, right?
Why you should get a real estate agent to just transfer all this information from the media to what was really happening in even to your neighborhood. Like your neighborhood's different
Yeah.
from that neighborhood. This town's different from that town. So it's very important to.
Or even in the neighborhood, right? So like my neighborhood, there's like 2 sections within the
Right,
neighborhood,
right.
and like one is, a little bit more expensive section than a different section, and if you don't
And that's
know how
standard
you,
in a lot.
it is.
So we lived in Bay Hill for a long time,
Yeah.
Waterstone. There's 4 there. And I would know when I started real estate and people would try to compare as they say, they're stepping stones.
Yeah.
And they would take this neighborhood to compare it to this neighborhood with price per square foot and everything when an agent didn't understand that. It's like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You have to stay within the like section of your neighborhood.
Hamilton proper is the one I always try to reference because there's so many subsets within Hamilton proper. It's a
some
huge
of them could
neighborhood
just be
with totally
ranches,
different.
3-bedroom,
Yeah.
2-bath ranch, no basement, all the way to the 6,000 square foot. And those neighborhoods exist. You can't
Chatham is
cross-reference.
like that also,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You got stuff that's
Gets back to the pricing.
it
You've
does.
got to know how to do it and what houses you're using.
100%. So, anyway, so I'm Kyle Morris, Morris Property Group, and FC Tucker. Phone number is 317-649-5122 if you need to get a hold of me.
And Shelly Walters with the Shelly Walters Realty Group and FC Tucker. You can call me on my cell phone, 317-201-2601. Thanks so much. And please like and subscribe to our show whenever you want. Indie Housing Market. Thanks, so guys. See you later.
I think I'm going to wear mittens next week. Don't know what to do with them.
It's cold, too.